Welcome to the Mindset Connection podcast, where we showcase everyday change makers doing extraordinary things in the field of mental health and wellness. We are your hosts, Jennifer Clearwaters and Cindy O'Connell. Thank you for tuning in for our 14th episode. We are clicking them off every week. So we hope that you find our hosts, or our guests, the hosts too, but we hope you find our guests just as amazing and inspiring as we do. And today we are welcoming Sheila Martello to the podcast. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Tell you all the wonderful things that she does.
It's gonna be a little shorter because if I read her whole bio, it could be the whole 45 minutes.
Yes.
But she's done so many wonderful things. So she is a certified grief service provider and the founder and director of Stephy's Place, which is a center for grief and loss located in Red Bank, New Jersey. So Stephy's Place provides peer support groups to those who have experienced the loss of a loved one. Sheila is an advocate for the process of healing, and along with her staff, her board of directors, and 85 volunteers, they give back to the bereaved. And, as we were sitting here before we started, we were just, Jen and I were just amazed at all the things that Sheila has done. So, and you will also be. So Sheila's also the proud owner of 2 Jersey Mike franchises, and she is a master radical living coach. So Jen and I had the great pleasure of working alongside, Sheila was in charge because when you work with Sheila, Sheila is usually in charge.
Sheila's
I
in
get the
charge.
feeling, yes.
Mhm.
So anyway, we had a wellness day for grieving families at the Brielle Elementary School in Brielle, New Jersey. And we saw firsthand her passion, her organization skills, and her love for the work. So welcome, Sheila.
Yes,
Thank you for having me.
we're so happy.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in and talk about Stephy's Place. If you could tell our listeners what it is, how'd you get the name? What's the background behind it?
Okay, so Stephy's Place is a peer support center for grief and loss. We deal with adults, children 18, so young adults 18 to 30 for loss of parent, but for the majority, it's adults. And Stephy's Place came from, I say it all the time, if not for September 11th, Stephy's Place would not exist.
Mm.
And I'll explain that a little bit. I lost my husband in the attack of the World Trade Center. At the time, my boys were 5 and 7. And I did some work in Washington for tax legislation, fighting for the widows. And then about 6 months later, I realized that I needed to be a mom to James and Thomas. So that's where I concentrated my efforts. During that time in January, I had a dream, and it was more like a visitation, if anybody has ever had a dream like that. And my husband was sitting in his recliner like he always did, and he said to me, Sheila, listen, if God would have came to me in August and offered me a one-way ticket to heaven, I would have had to say no. But if God came to me in January and offered me a one-way ticket home, I'd have to say no, because I am home, and I'll wait for you. But until then, you take care of yourself and the boys, and you live. That dream was unsettling, and it stayed with me for years. And 14 years later, my 2 older boys were going off to college, and I was trying to figure out my purpose. My purpose had been them. And I was trying to encourage myself to create a purpose for me. So it's a long story, but I met a woman named Stephanie Hardman. She actually was the sister-in-law of my son's hockey coach. And I spent some time with her and her kids. And every time I left her, which was only probably 4 times that I actually was in her presence, and she said to me each time, Sheila, remember, I know I'm going home, but my family, they're the ones that need support. So driving home from her house, the last time I met her, which was about 4 days before she died, I said, where did I hear that? That's so familiar to me. And I remembered the dream. And then I said, wait a minute, how did I get here where I'm okay and I'm happy, I'm living a full life? And I said, it was my support group.
Mm-hmm.
It was Holy Cross every Tuesday at 9:30, and Tuesday got me to Friday, and then Friday I said, just get through the weekend and it'll be Tuesday again, and you'll be with people that get it. And it was at that time that I decided that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to open a support center for people who had suffered like me, because there wasn't anything like that.
No.
So I went back to, just coincidentally, which I've learned over my lifetime, there are no coincidences. We were having a reunion luncheon, and I went to them and I said, I have this idea. Who wants to help? And that's all I had to say. 4 months later, Stephy's place opened, and it was amazing, because our bereavement minister, we call him, who is very influential. He was our facilitator in 2001. His name's Kevin Keelan. I didn't want to do it without him. I said, Kevin has to come. So we decided to see what the interest would be. How many people needed support. So we put out a flyer. We had no idea what we were doing. We put out a flyer. And we're like, Kevin Keelan is going to talk about the roller coaster of grief in Fairhaven. Yeah. And 47 people responded. So we're like, great, 47 people. 278 people showed up that night.
Of course.
And we opened the next day with one group and 3 facilitators. And, it'll be 10 years in September, and we have over 50 groups and 85 volunteers. So
and all of this is cost free.
All of this, yes, is free of charge. Yes.
And where is Stephy's place actually located?
Stephy's place is located in Red Bank, on the corner of West Front and Morford. It's across from Brothers Pizza. Usually people know from there. Yeah, and it's actually it's housed in the building. Elaine Chevalier, who lost her son on September 11th. She owns the building, and she was the one that got in touch with the 2 facilitators that facilitated our group in September 11th. She knew we needed support. So she started the support group, really, by finding the facilitators, and now our support center is in her building. So it means a lot to us.
Yes.
That's amazing.
That's
amazing.
A really beautiful story.
Yeah.
Just
while we're talking about training, let's talk about Dr. Alan Wolfett. And I know that you were trained by him and from the Center for Loss and Life. Can you give us a little background on that? What was that like? And
sure.
What's it like to work with him?
When I started Stephy's Place, I realized very quickly that it was going to grow, that it wasn't going to be just one group.
There's a need.
Yeah. So I looked in the mirror and said, you don't know what you're doing other than experience a lot of loss. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's in a way that was enough, but not enough for me. So I started researching how I could get training in grief. My first thought was to go back to school. And then I realized that wasn't going to do it, because there is no training in grief when you go back to school to be a counselor or something like that. So I said, that's not going to work. So again, no coincidences. My son James was playing college hockey in Colorado, and I was sitting in my hotel room. And like everything, I was giving it to God and saying, how am I going to do this? This is bigger than I thought it was going to be. And I don't want this to fail. So all of a sudden I Googled grief training, and popped up Dr. Alan Wolfett and the Center for Loss and Life Transition in Colorado.
Right where you are.
This is interesting. So
this'll work.
What you needed to do is you fill out the form and you email him, a little background of yourself. So I did. And within a couple of days, I received an email back, and it said, we'd love to have you. This is our training, all our trainings. And I looked at it, and I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I need. So way out of my comfort zone, I signed up, went to a class that I thought I would be, very deficient in knowledge, being with therapists and palliative care people and hospice people. But there were other lay people just like me, and I was sold. He is amazing. He has been my mentor ever since. He's now a friend. And he told me something when I walked in the first day. He said, I know you're trying to do all this for other people. He said, but I'm going to tell you something. You can't take anybody farther than you've come yourself. So you have some work to do.
Yep, because it starts with us.
Yes. So I said, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
And then I said, after the first class, I said, if Stephy's Place is still here in 10 years, Dr. Wolfett will be coming to our area, and we'll be 10 years in September. And Dr. Wolfett is coming October 1st and 2nd. And we are so excited to have him.
And so tell us about that. Tell us about
what you're planning.
Yeah.
So October 1st will be a session for the public. It'll be 6:30 to 8:30 at CBA. They were nice enough to allow us to use their auditorium. So we'll be there, and that's open to the public. We're selling tickets right now on our website, and they're $25 a ticket to see him, which he is a must-see. I just can't even explain in words how great he is. The next day, October 2nd, he'll be here to do a professional workshop, which will be full day. There'll be a cost associated with that, probably about $125 a person. It's meant for people that companion the bereaved or help anyone within loss. And that'll be at the Oyster Point, and it'll be a full day. Lunch will be provided. And again, he will help people that companion the bereaved. He's very supportive in a help and healing role. Like I said, he is just
and that's also up on the website, or that's still being planned out.
The second one we'll send we're going to send the flyer out probably next week, and it's an invite only. Pretty much, it's going to mail. I've been asking people, putting word out that if you think you might be interested in funeral homes, hospice people, palliative care, schools, that you need to let me know so you can be on the mailing list, because there's we can fit about 150 people. And this is like you were going to Colorado. I mean, go to Colorado, it's expensive. And he's going to do it in a one-day presentation here. Yeah.
So if you're listening, you want to go, email Sheila.
Yeah, email.
And could people go that are just, maybe themselves are suffering from loss, and maybe they are also looking for some meaning? So would that person, would that be, or they just go to the public session? Okay.
Yeah.
Just to clarify that.
Yeah. The workshop is definitely going to be geared for people
caregivers
that are caring for the bereaved
or therapists
working in the field. Yeah.
Okay.
And it'll be totally enlightening.
Yes, it will.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you for
that's
sharing
wonderful.
all
And I'm
that.
so glad
It's
that you
amazing.
are offering that. So let's get back to Stephy's Place, and let's talk a little bit about what are some of the programs that you offer. You talked a little bit with us about it, but give us an example of the groups that are offered.
Okay, so we are a center that provides support groups. That is our main thing. We do have monthly meditation, which is done. People can sign up for that. We do have a resource person that will, if somebody needs, because we really recommend that people have a therapist and group. It's a great complement to group, is to have a therapist as well. So a lot of times, especially after COVID, we found that people call a therapist, they're not taking new patients, or they don't take their insurance. So we have someone that if somebody is looking for a one-on-one therapist, they can reach out to her. She'll take their information, their insurance, and she'll go out and do kind of the legwork and
she'll look for someone.
That's
huge. And get
great.
That's
usually
huge.
she tries to get 3 people that you can call that are, number 1, take your insurance, and number 2, are accepting new clients.
Because it's overwhelming.
It is.
It's so hard.
And you're in a dead end, and then you don't want to do it.
Yeah. Plus
going through
people
grief,
you're already
you're already like overwhelmed.
Yeah. Right. Well,
it's very hard.
Exactly. It is. It's hard to navigate it all. So we try to do that. And then we just finished, we'll send out an inquiry to all our clients saying, who do you recommend?
Yeah. Who did you use?
Have you used?
Who helped you?
Right? Because grief is a specialty.
Yeah.
Yes, no question.
So that's where our database comes from.
Right.
So the groups, to get back, Cindy, to what you said, the groups that we offer are loss of spouse, loss of a child. We have infant loss of a sibling, loss of a parent. Now, this is adult loss of a parent. The youngest we do is 18. We now have 2 groups specifically geared towards loss of fentanyl poisoning.
Yeah. Sadly enough.
Yes.
Yes.
We have loss, suicide survivor loss.
Right.
And I think, and we do have divorce. We have a divorce group. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because that's a loss.
That's a loss. Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's what, when we were planning the day, that was one of the things that we said. It's not just the loss of a person. There could be a lot of losses in your life. And that's part of life.
And we always said, if there's a loss, sometimes people call and we don't have a group for that specific loss. We always say, if we get 3 people. We need 3 people to start a group, and we need a facilitator that has experienced that loss. Because at Stephy's Place, if you have not experienced the loss, you are not facilitating the group.
Interesting.
So
That
if
makes
we
perfect
can,
sense.
if we can do that,
Yes.
we can start a group. Right now, we're a little short on rooms because we're so busy.
But that makes sense
Yeah.
because if you haven't, like, you have to feel it and go through it to be able to
You have
then
to get
really
it.
help other people. Yeah.
So your facilitators, are you training your facilitators?
Yes. Through studying with Dr. Wolfeld,
Okay.
I did a grief education course. I've worked with him on the curriculum, and I've developed a curriculum to train each facilitator. So it's a 6-week, once a week for 6 consecutive weeks. And they come to me and they learn about how to run a support group, and they learn about grief. And what I've found from most of them, who are probably 90% of them now, are our former participants.
Mm-hmm.
They've said that it's actually helping them process forth through their grief.
Yes.
Yes.
Right?
Of course it is.
Yes.
Yeah, which is very helpful
Wow,
for
that's
them.
Wonderful. So 85 volunteers. Does anybody get paid that works at your
One person gets paid. He is
Wha-
our bereavement minister that I had spoken about before.
Yes.
Yes.
So when and it's not you.
Yeah.
It is not me. It is not me. No, I volunteer my services as the executive director, and
and
that's
you're
it.
there how many hours a week?
Oh, I would say between 40 and 50.
Okay. And
There's
she
times-
volunteers her, so this is
job.
a full-time job.
A full-time
Yes,
job
yes,
that you're
it's a full-time
giving
job.
your
Yeah.
services.
That I love.
Yeah,
Yes.
that you love. We can tell that you love it.
Yeah.
So do you have like an administrative assistant or somebody that like, sends out the emails and does all that, or is that you?
Yes, no. I over the years I've realized I have to have an office staff.
You do.
So I have an office manager, and then I have some office administrative assistants that work underneath her,
Mhm.
and they keep the place going.
And they also don't get paid?
Yeah, our office manager
Oh,
actually
okay.
she gets
Okay.
paid.
Oh, yeah,
Just-
that makes sense.
But in our bereavement, all
Right.
the facilitators,
The staff.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I
okay,
guess
got it.
Well, because you can't do it alone. You need some help.
No, no, and it would be of a disservice
It
to
would
the
be.
people if I
Mhm.
tried to do it alone. That's one thing I've
Yes.
learned over the years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if someone is interested in being a volunteer, what would you tell them to do?
Well, they would just contact us. They could
Okay.
email us or call us. The thing is that we really only have 2 ways you can volunteer. You could be an office caregiver, we call it, where they set up the rooms and welcome the people. And then there's facilitator, right? A facilitator is a huge commitment because
Yeah.
our groups some of our groups, especially loss of spouse, loss of a child, are ongoing. So you're committing at least 2 years
So there's no end
of
date.
your
There's
life.
no
just-
end.
There's an end date for those. We try to get you through your 2nd anniversary,
Okay, gotcha.
right? So you're committing 2 years. There's other groups that are ongoing, like our young loss of spouse group, and doesn't really have an end date. So that's a real commitment.
Yes.
That I facilitate the groups that are ongoing. I facilitate with someone else, and Kevin, our bereavement minister, also facilitates a group that is ongoing, and Lori Jark, who is our person that does suicide education and support at
Okay.
Stephy's Place. Yeah.
Wow.
So are these groups running once a week or once
It
every
all
2
depends
weeks,
on
or-
it all depends on the group
Okay.
and the specific loss.
Mhm.
Up till October, loss of spouse and loss of child were meeting every single week. Then we had wait lists that we could not do,
Yeah, you couldn't staff
we
it.
couldn't, in our heart, we couldn't let people stay on a wait list for as long as they were on the wait list. I just couldn't do it. So we had a meeting, and we decided that we would go to every other week. And then this way on the opposite
get
week.
them
So
in.
now we have, I feel like I'm in high school. We have an A week and a B week. And on the A week, so
Rotating schedule.
one facilitator
Yeah.
will do an A week and then a B week.
Yeah.
So they'll be able to do 2 groups in the same time they would have been able to do
Makes
only
a
one.
lot more
only
sense.
one, right?
A lot more sense.
Right.
Plus the fact that you have encouraged everybody to have a therapist besides the group.
So they're not just
So-
getting help
Right.
one time a week in a group setting. Ideally, they would be meeting with the therapist as well.
Yes, and what we found since October is that what happens is they get a chance to do some of the things that they talk about in group, right?
Mhm.
We're not, because our goal isn't to keep them with us,
You
right?
don't wanna
Our
be stuck.
goal
Right.
is to, let them go
Move
and
through the grief and move
right,
on.
because
Yes.
grief is the pain you feel,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And mourning is a shared experience you do with other people, right? However, it the pain of the grief has to be integrated into your life, and there's needs of mourning that need to take on, and you need to live a full life again, and you only can do that when you start making the choices.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? And that
When
helps.
you start moving through the grief and you don't stay stuck in it.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something that you said earlier about, after your husband, I'm so sorry about all of that,
Thank you.
but you were you realized the most important thing was to raise these two little boys. So, we talked a little bit about this before, but you said you were going to serve your family. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think people need to understand that, we see people like you and you're like, wow, what am I doing with my life? I want to be like her. But yet you recognize that your family was the most important thing at that time.
Yeah. I remember we had moved to Rumson 10 days before Jimmy was killed.
Oh,
So I really didn't
Mhm.
know anyone.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You just
oh
got
my
yeah.
there.
goodness.
So you look at your life and you realize your priorities, right? And you also get a new perception of who you are and what life is about. So I did a lot of soul searching. And I'm telling you, a lot of this soul searching came after I opened Steffi's Place.
Mhm.
A lot of this other, having my two boys and being of service to them, I didn't even realize I did until I started looking at myself after Steffi's Place opened, right?
Yes.
However, I know now that we have a purpose, right? We need a purpose. You need a purpose to get up in the morning. I sit in groups and people say, oh my gosh, if it wasn't for my kids. And then there's other people in the Young Loss of Spouse group that don't have kids, but they're getting up
Mhm.
because they have a purpose, and their purpose is them, right? So whatever the purpose is, I've established the fact that my purpose, there's two reasons for me being here. One is to get closer to God, and the other one is to be of service to others. Now, that of service to others doesn't only mean Steffi's Place. It's of service to others in your life. Number one, me, right? If I'm not of service to myself, I can't be of any service to anybody else. And I
Right. So you say this every
150%.
day.
I'm so glad to
Yeah.
hear you
Please
say this
hear
because we
this,
say it every
listeners.
day.
Right. And
Every day.
Who's your best friend? You are.
Right.
How are you going
That
to help
is-
others if you're not helping yourself?
Exactly. There's a reason we tell people all the time, there's a reason they say to put your oxygen mask on the plane first, right? But it's a very hard concept
Mhm.
for people to believe because we don't grow up that way. Societally, to be selfish is a problem. I tell people, don't say selfish, say
Yes.
self-full, right? I'm full of
Beautiful.
myself, because if not, you resent. And I did, the 14 years before I opened Steffi's Place, there was a lot of resentment. Like, I remember taking down the garbage and being like, Jimmy, why the hell aren't you here? Right? I have to
What?
take
You
down
have
the
to do
garbage.
this?
Right? Like, resenting little things. And then that transfers into your life. Then you realize, wait a minute, if I can be a little bit more selfish, serve me first, I have so much more energy and love being able to serve other people. And that's your family. That's Steffi's Place people, my Jersey Mike's customers. Like,
Yes.
that's what
Yes,
that's what
it's
we're
all
here
about.
for,
Yeah,
right?
That's what
it
it's all
is.
about.
It's not about getting married and having a big house and, having a great job, or it's about service.
Yeah. And I think when you go through loss, you may lose that sense of purpose. Like, what am I supposed to be doing here? Or you, like you said, you moved in and you had like this whole life set up and then this happened. So what do we do when life throws us life?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the main things, which is again really hard to do, is to feel it,
Mm-hmm.
is to let it wash over you. We say, embrace the pain, make pain your friend.
Mhm.
People look at you like you have three heads. However, if you allow it to do what it needs to do and you feel it, you can heal it, right?
Yeah.
And it starts with just a little intention, right? Looking in the mirror and saying, okay, I'm going to do something for me today. Now, 90% of the day might be crying about your loss. But if you can have that just little time where It might just be a smile in the mirror.
Yeah.
I used to set my alarm on my phone. I tell people that all the time. I didn't have the opportunity with 2 little boys and a new house and a new area. And I didn't have the opportunity to cry all day. I didn't, but I needed to cry. So I would set my alarm.
That's right.
And I'd look at a picture of Jimmy or hold one of his shirts and I'd cry. And when that alarm went off, I got in the shower and I got out of the shower and I put makeup on. I'm like, okay, well, today. And what I found is it wasn't chasing me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we
You
really
allowed
need,
time.
again, it's being, I didn't know then, but it's being selfish, right? Doing what you need to do for you in the amount of time that you have. Because telling people, oh, you need to, let it wash over you. And there's somebody that needs to move right away. Or
Right.
right? There's
Right.
also the time where you can put it on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go to work.
Yes.
You have to be a nurse.
Yeah.
You put it on the shelf, but you got to take it off the shelf.
Right.
Right.
It's still there.
Right.
It's still there.
Right.
Yep. It's still there. So aside from Steffi's Place, you're also a master radical life coach. So what is that?
Okay.
What
So
is that?
there's always these stories. So it was the week before I opened Steffi's Place. And I'm sure you two each have a friend that can kind of look right through you. Yes. So
Mhm.
I have several friends like that. And a group of them came to see Steffi's Place before I opened. And my one friend, Annie, looked at me and she said, "This is great, Sheila, but I hate to tell you, but this is going to fail. Just like everything else you've tried to do since Jimmy died." Right? Because I had failed relationships and just failed things, like things that I was disappointed on. And she said, "It's going to fail." I looked at her and I'm like, "Annie, like,
Wow.
this is
Thank you, friend.
Right? I'm like, this is a beautiful thing." And
Thank you,
she,
blunt, very blunt friend.
She wrote on a piece of paper, she said, "Read this book." She said, "Read this book and do the work." And it's interesting that 2 years later, Alan Wolfeld said to me to do the work. And I did. I read the book. It was called Radical Forgiveness. And I started going to a radical forgiveness coach. And I worked with her. And then I loved it so much. And it had been nothing that I ever was exposed to before. So I decided to be a radical forgiveness coach. And then there's a master's coach program, which I also studied. And I say I live radically. And what it is quickly.
Is this
'cause-
Dr. Kristen Neff? Or
No,
no? Okay.
Colin Tipping
Okay.
is the person that wrote Radical Forgiveness. And as a master coach or a radical living coach, what it is that you give people tools to use to take ownership of their past hurts and live a peaceful life. And I can only compare it to, because I've always had a therapist and I've always done other modalities of therapy. And in therapy, I've been able to know what my issues are.
Mhm.
Okay, I had a bipolar mother, an alcoholic father. Like we can get down there. And I know what my issues are. Radical forgiveness actually has helped me heal them.
Mhm.
Mm,
And they're tools
Yes.
that are there.
okay.
And that's what I do. I don't really have a lot of time to do that. So right now,
What
I'm
a surprise.
Actually, yeah. I've learned that groups are better. So right now I'm actually in the middle of, I have a class that's going on right now and 8 people that actually come to my house because I need them to. And we're doing a class on radical forgiveness right now. So I do that in groups. I'd love to be a grief counselor one-on-one. I love to do radical forgiveness more one-on-one. I just don't have the time. And I do have to be a little selfish and have time for myself. So I do it in groups instead.
But I love that you
Yeah.
really ultimately, and thank you, Annie, for
Oh,
Yes.
my gosh.
saying
Those
this.
are the
Yes.
gifts, right?
But you really did this for you.
Yeah.
Because you really did the work.
Yeah. And I wasn't peaceful.
Yeah.
I wasn't peaceful. I had all this angst. And I swore when my husband was killed that I wouldn't raise bitter boys.
Yes.
And I had done or achieved a pretty good job. However,
You were bitter.
You were
right,
better.
Yeah.
like
Right.
and everybody gets that fork in the road and you decide bitter or better. And I don't, at Steffi's Place, I lived what I preach,
Mm-hmm.
right? I had to
You
decide.
have to.
And if I think Annie's right. If I didn't choose better, I don't know if
Yeah.
Steffi's Place would have existed.
Or
Yes.
people will see it. It's not genuine. People are
Yeah.
going to come in and say, you're telling me this, but you're not
But
living it.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
That's great.
All right.
running
We're
out
going
of
to
time.
switch
Oh, we gotta
gears
switch
again.
Switch
Yeah.
businesses.
So just real quick, So besides coaching, running Steffi's place, and doing your
Being a
own
mom.
self-care, being a mom. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you're an owner of 2 Jersey Mike franchises.
Yes, I am.
So how'd you get involved in that work?
Okay, so I actually was introduced to Jersey Mike's by two gyms, Jim Diorio and Jimmy Diorio, who at the time Jim was my husband and Jimmy was my stepson, and they came to me to for me to get involved with them to basically finance Jimmy's dream, which was to make subs. And about a year later, my son James, who was in Nashville at the time. Yes, there's a lot of
A
Jimmys.
lot of Jims.
My son James, who was working in Nashville at the time, decided to come home, and he wanted to be closer to home, and he decided to join the business. So he has. So over the last 4 years since we started, where we opened our first Jersey Mike's, it is now just my son James and me. James is the primary operating partner on the ground.
Mhm.
I'm more the support. I go in every week and I train the managers. I have meetings. I make everybody, feel good.
Yeah.
It's great. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
definitely.
it's so much fun. It's a great company.
That's good.
Good for
great.
you.
So let's talk about, we did, and we were talking about this before we went on air, in the event that we did with Steffi's Place in Common
Mhm.
Ground gosh,
Brielle.
at the Brielle Elementary School just a few months ago. And it was such a day of just joy and healing for so many people. So how do you, what are your thoughts on the day? Because you were definitely in charge. And a lot of us that
I
were
was
there,
not in charge.
we were doing and teaching and stuff, but you got to witness it from a different angle. So what's your perspective on how that event went?
Well, the event I think was amazing. I think we can all agree that it was
Yes.
absolutely
Yes,
amazing.
absolutely.
I always find the gifts in things,
Mhm.
and one of the gifts was obviously the people I met. Both of you, especially Lynn
Mhm.
from
Yes.
Common Ground, Lynn Schneider, and Cindy, her administrative assistant,
Oh
who
my
is
gosh.
she makes
Oh
me
my
look
gosh,
like
she
I'm
did great.
unorganized.
Yes,
She
yes.
was absolutely amazing. So when Lynn contacted me to help with the event, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. However, as it evolved, I realized how so important it was
Mhm.
that we open this up to the community, because I know that sometimes I'm at Steffi's Place, or I'm sure Lynn's at Common Ground, and we're thinking, everybody knows this, right? Like everybody knows that,
Yeah.
there are no rewards for speed and grief, and like the things that we say, but then you realize that no,
They don't know.
not everybody knows, and not everybody's supported. So the idea was not mine, and it was, I think you guys
Well,
were.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
our
Like,
idea, but-
yeah.
and
Yeah.
Lynn, and I just have that. My therapist says it's my greatest asset and worst liability, that I tend to come in and just kind of like start doing things. So I played
I
a
think that's
bigger
what we
role.
needed.
Yeah, I played a bigger role
Yes.
than maybe first thought, but it was so nice. And I don't know, I've done events before, and I'm not just saying this, but everyone worked so well together. There was no
Yes.
drama. I mean, you put a bunch of women together and there was no drama.
There was one man. Yeah.
What? Oh, right.
Yeah.
It was one
but
yeah,
truly,
it was
you're
just
right.
amazing. And so that was my gift, right? To meet all of you and to work with Lynn and Cindy. But I saw the faces of the people that were there, and they were so appreciative, so grateful. There were a lot of Steffi's Place participants there.
Yes, there were.
And we received such great feedback.
I'm so
People
glad
were
to hear
so
that.
excited for what was offered, the way it was offered. I had one person tell me, I never would have thought this is what it was from the description of it. I had no idea what to expect, but my wife told me I had to go, and I am so glad I went. He said, I don't even have words to describe the way it made me feel.
Wow.
So
That's really
we know,
good.
you're doing good work when that
Yeah.
happens, right?
You know,
Yeah.
and I have to say, with Cindy and I have talked about this to a number of people. Brielle Elementary School, like when you walked in that building, it was such a, and you could think if you're doing a day for grieving families, it could be, okay, this might be pretty sad. I don't want to go to this. This could be a sad event. But when you walked in that school, it was so bright. It was so decorated. It was such a peaceful and beautiful space.
It's true.
Really, and you could see people going down the hallways and looking at all the pictures that were outside every single door. It really just was the right place to have something like that, I think.
From the principal to the
No
maintenance
question.
person
Yes.
and the IT person. And I think that's too, with the work we do, I know my family was very concerned, like, Ma, it's going to be so sad. Like, why are you putting yourself in this position? It's not sad. Like, sad things happen. However, when you see the light in someone's eye that they realize that even though something sad happened, they don't have to live a sad life.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
To tell people we have two responsibilities when somebody dies, right? One is to never let them be forgotten, and the other is to live a full life. That's not sad. When you hear people laughing behind closed doors, and maybe that's the only place they can laugh, a safe place. And I saw that day.
Yes.
People were laughing. People were smiling. People were telling stories about their loved ones. It was just wonderful.
It was a wonderful day.
And I hope we'll do it again.
Yes.
Yeah, I
for
think
sure.
I'm pretty sure we will.
Yeah.
So as we get closer to the end here, so we always like to ask this question: what's a takeaway? I mean, you had so many takeaways, but if there was one takeaway that you would like to offer for our listeners and viewers, because we are on
YouTube now.
What would that be?
I think it would be to do you, right? No matter what you're doing. I'm sure there's people listening that aren't bereaved, maybe, if somebody isn't. I don't know how anybody that's having experienced some sort of loss, right? But really to do you, to think about you and what you want your life to look like going forward. And then just like I put in Waze. If I go to Food Town, I put in Waze just to get there faster. But no, to like enter into your Waze that destination. And then every day you wake up, you do one thing to make that happen, right? Like, because everybody's experiences are different. Everybody's situation is different. I can't speak to anybody else's situation, only mine. And it took me a while to realize that in my Waze, I needed to put in a certain destination, which was actually me and peace, right? That's my destination. It is peace.
I love
and
that.
And you can feel peace
too.
in the chaos.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I started this, I always talk about smiling whenever we do a workshop. And so this is the smile challenge. Smile once an hour because it raises your serotonin level. So I'm watching you smiling through this whole thing, and you every time I've met
you,
every time
those smiles.
Yeah.
It's genuine.
But it's something for people to think about. It is genuine, but when you fake a smile, it becomes real.
Yeah.
It becomes real because you feel so silly.
Yeah.
So sometimes
you have to
just that. Yeah. But
and
anyway,
I really
that was
love
beautiful.
how you've shared so much about your experience, that you've been shown over and over that like, oh, sorry, Sheila, there's still more work you have to do. Because I'm sure people come in and they see you and they're like, oh, look at her. Like, I'm never going to be that. Like, I'm sad. I can't get out of bed. I can't do anything. How am I ever going to get to where she is?
Yeah.
But it goes back to you were willing to do hard work.
And it's funny because after I met Sheila at the Braille Elementary School and we did our little tour, Jen wasn't there. So I said to her, wait till you meet Sheila. She is the real deal. Yeah. That's exactly what I said.
You're my type of person.
Yeah. She's a get it
hard
done.
Work. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and
it's
do hard things.
It's hard to do hard stuff.
Yeah.
And especially when it's just you, because we know, and I know this from therapy, I can't make anybody do anything.
No.
I can't make you do, even if you come with lofty goals, I want to achieve this, this, and this, I can't make you do it. You're the one that has to do it.
Yeah. And I think it comes to you giving yourself permission to do it and loving yourself enough to do it. And
that's you're worth it.
That's
you're worth it.
Yeah. Because that's where it starts. If we don't love ourselves, we can't do the work.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
What's next for me?
Because I'm sure the way you're thinking, there's always a next.
I do. I'd like retirement to be my next.
You're too young.
I'm going to be 62 in July. I'm very transparent. I'm going to be 62 in July. And I always thought I would retire at 65. That would be my Stephy's Place kind of exit. However, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that I'm starting to learn how to do that offsite when I have to. And I love Jersey Mike's. I wish our stores were closer so I could spend more time there. But I do love that as well. And I want to be of support to my son in his growth there. Other than that, I don't know. I've always thought about writing a book. I've thought about publishing an article. However, it must not be the right time because I haven't put it as a priority. So I don't beat myself up for it.
It's an idea.
It's an idea. Yeah.
So there's lots of ideas. It just right now I am the happiest I've ever been, the most peaceful I've ever been, and the most satisfied with what my day-to-day life is. I have a son that's getting married in June in Italy. Like I said, James is killing it at Jersey Mike's, and I have a little one at the University of Tennessee that's a junior. So my life is,
full.
It's full.
It's full.
And and I have to remember my boundaries.
Yes.
Because I have to be self-full.
Exactly.
Yes.
So how do you view failure? These are some questions that we ask everybody that comes on here. We didn't give you this ahead of time.
No, that's okay. Failure. I think failure is a word. I think that there is no failure. I think that things happen exactly how and when they're supposed to. And I think that just like healing is a word that people have different views on, I think failure is a word that people have different. If you asked me in my life how I've failed, I've never failed, because in order to be who I am today, they can't be failures, right? Because I am not failing now.
Right.
I'm thriving now, right?
Yes.
So I think it's perception. So my perception of failure is that it doesn't exist.
Okay. So what are your 3 most important strengths? And believe me, I want you to just go right off the top of your head. Don't even think about it, because I know you have like 30.
No, I think my strengths are, number one, that I'm very straightforward. I am very hardworking. I'm passionate.
That's
I think that's a real good assessment.
Yeah. And
real
this
good
whole
assessment.
episode has been very passionate.
Yes, there's no question. Okay, so there's a few more questions.
Yeah, no worries.
So, our book, The Elevation Principles, we asked, 1,000 people these questions, and now it's even more. So is there something in your life you'd like to change? It's a yes or no.
No.
Okay. Well, you are the third person.
Yes.
The other 2 were men that answered that. So the next question would have been, what's holding you back? And then the next question would be, what is one small thing that you could do? But you clearly are right where you should be.
Well, because you're at peace.
Well,
So
right
what
now,
you said.
10 minutes from now, I could have to change something, right? But right now,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but with you two doing this podcast.
I love that. Thank you.
Me too.
So we're so glad that you came on. And
no, thank you so much for
wrapping
having
up our
me.
last
Yes.
minute. So, viewers and listeners out there, this has definitely been a very passionate episode. So if you want to learn more about Sheila or about Stephy's Place, please go to their website and look at all the things that they are doing. And we will be back again with another episode of The Mindset Connection with another incredible guest. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
So remember to do hard things and to pause, breathe, and then respond.
Thank you
so much. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
You're welcome.